Welcome. Yes, it's me, Michael. You're listening to Sheffield Hospital Radio. I'm really lucky today because my guest is Emma. Welcome, Emma.
Hello, lovely to be here.
How are you?
I'm very well. I feel like, it feels like Christmas Day because I've been so excited for coming on here. It's one of those where you kind of think, it feels like Desert Island Discs. I feel like I've reached the pinnacle of my career. I've been invited on to do my Desert Island Discs.
Well, absolutely. And you've you've come along with a stash of CDs and a big long list of songs. So really keen to get into those and to hear all about why you've picked those songs, but your role at the charity and what you do for Weston Park and our patients within Weston Park. So yeah, really looking forward to that. So tell us about your first track. I should have done more research on Desert Island Discs.
Oh, no, don't worry. So the first track is Happy. So at the charity, there's around 60 of us now. And part of what we do when we join the charity is we pick a song for our charity playlist. And it's the song, the kind of how we frame that is what would get you dancing in your kitchen. So this is the track that gets me dancing in my kitchen if it's a hard week or it's a long week or you just need to move about and get away from the screen a little bit. This is the song that gets me dancing round. So yeah, Happy by Pharrell Williams.
Fantastic. And it's clearly a popular choice because Tia, who's one of the support workers over at the Northern General, also picked it for a request. Absolutely, for a request this week for all the hard-working staff. I'm not quite sure which ward Tia works on, but a big shout out to you, Tia, and fantastic. Thanks for your first choice, Emma. So, Pharrell Williams and Happy. Happy there. That was the first choice of Emma, who's our guest today. You really were dancing along to that one, Emma.
Yeah, in the chair, shaking a few moves. I'm hoping you'll be dancing before long.
Yeah, I think looking at the songs that are coming up, most definitely. So if we just kind of, it'd be lovely to hear a bit about what the role of the cancer charity is. So we're obviously very fortunate here at Sheffield Teaching Hospitals with Weston Park as a regional cancer unit. Some of our listeners might not realise it provides cancer services across South Yorkshire and North Derbyshire. Input into Barnsley, Rotherham, Doncaster and Chesterfield. Yeah. So fantastic facility that we've got for treatments and support here for patients. So what's the role of the charity? How's that sit along the work that's done within Weston Park Hospital or Weston Park Cancer Centre, I should say?
Yeah, so as you say, the hospital as a cancer centre now that it now is has been in existence for over 50 years and as you know has been providing care and support and services to that huge population. So, I always see Weston Park as providing the care and support and treatment for that whole population right across South Yorkshire, North Derbyshire and Bassetlaw. In terms of the charity, we've been in existence for 30 years. I haven't been there all that time. But yeah, so we celebrated our 30 years last March, so we're coming up to 31. And we do three things, or three broad areas of work. So we invest into research, and as we know, cancer survival, cancer treatments have expanded and improved so much over many years, and that's through research. So we work in partnership with the universities, we work in partnership with colleagues right across STH in terms of those active researchers and wanting to improve treatments for cancer patients. We also enhance treatment. So we don't give treatment as a charity. We leave that to you experts. But what we do is make sure that the experience of people having treatment is as best that it can be. So for example, we will help to refurbish hospital wards. So the brachytherapy suite, for example, is we invested over £100,000 in the redevelopment of that suite. We also invest into equipment. We fund the fish tank in the radiotherapy waiting department so that, people who are going for the radiotherapy treatment can sit in a calm environment. And then the third area of our work is providing care and support, and we do that directly through our Cancer Support Centre, but also through our community outreach programmes as well. So we supported over 2,000 newly diagnosed patients last year, and the number of interactions is over 25,000. So we are a sizable service provider to people who are at a point in their lives where they're needing support.
And I imagine because of the nature of cancer treatment and how much it impacts on people's lives and livelihoods and families, but also in the treatments, because many cancer treatments require frequent visits, and particularly if they're coming from across South Yorkshire, what's the kind of support and things that you offer to those patients?
So when I first arrived at the charity in 2019, some of the conversations I was having with consultants and oncologists was that people were turning down potentially curative treatment because they couldn't get to Weston Park for it. And I thought to myself, that can't be true. That's just ridiculous, impossible, surely. We obviously had sadly a global pandemic in the interim, it's shortly after that. But that thought and that piece of information never left me. And following the pandemic, we started a transport service. So we now run free transport from Rotherham, from Barnsley and from Chesterfield on a daily basis, Monday to Friday, twice a day. So we do shuttle runs from Barnsley, Chesterfield and Rotherham, but we also have an hourly shuttle bus doing a park and ride with our partners at Meadow Hall. So this is bringing patients in who would otherwise have to catch trains and buses and super trams all to get to Weston Park for chemotherapy, for clinics, and particularly for radiotherapy. Many of those patients have to come on a daily basis for a number of weeks. And that, when you're travelling from around the region, that can be really gruelling and equally really expensive.
And we know kind of travel, and it's kind of patients and their relatives are anxious and worried and want to get there on time. So that must make such a massive difference.
Honestly,
it's
absolutely. So the charity hub that we have right beside the front door at Weston Park Hospital is our sort of transport base, and 33 volunteer drivers make those minibuses move on a daily basis.
So that's all volunteers?
That is all volunteers driving those minibuses. They are absolute stalwarts. Yeah. They go out in all weathers. They are the people who I've heard it described to me that it's like a therapy room on wheels, because they make people feel relaxed, people feel much more comfortable, and they drop them at the door, and it takes all of people's worries away. So it's a really impactful service, and also means that we're making our services and the hospital services as accessible as possible.
Emma, you were telling us about some of the fantastic support that Weston Park Charity offers, particularly for supporting patients to get into Weston Park Cancer Centre. When they arrive or kind of in between the treatments, what other support do you offer?
So we know that obviously treatment is first and foremost, and people quite rightly want to focus their energies on that. But we're human beings, aren't we? Cancer affects a whole range of things in our lives, our emotional, health, our physical health, our families, our finances. So at the charity, we provide a range of different support to help people kind of deal with all of those aspects. So a lot of people, their thoughts immediately go to their financial situation. So we have a free welfare advice service in partnership with Citizens Advice in Sheffield. And that's a very specialist, one-to-one sessions. They can be done by phone, they can be done in person. And that helps people understand what benefits they're entitled to. It helps people who may sadly have a terminal diagnosis get access to those benefits on a speeded up pathway. And also it just, you don't know what you don't know. So being able to kind of get that specialist input with somebody who understands that complex kind of benefits world is incredibly reassuring for people. And then if we pan out, we have complementary therapies, we have a counselling service, we have a number of healthcare professionals who are a listening ear, who can help people decipher what, options they've been given and how, they to understand a treatment plan. It really is this is through our Cancer Support Centre, which is right beside Weston Park Hospital. So people can just drop in Monday Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. They can contact us via email, via our website, over the phone. So we try and make it as accessible as possible. We run coffee mornings on a monthly basis. So again, our amazing volunteers are part of that coffee morning to help people kind of settle in. It's really daunting, isn't it, going somewhere for the first time? So yeah, we do that in partnership with Sheffield University. So we use their cafe over at the Wave, the building right opposite, very fancy building, right opposite Weston Park. And we have around 30, 40, 50 people turn up at that. I always make sure I go to the Christmas one because the cake is just absolutely fabulous. And then we run courses. So we run counselling, group therapy. We do one-to-one therapy. At the moment, we've got a nutrition course that is running. So for people whose treatment may have affected, their appetite, what they're able to eat, what drinks they can have. So that is done with a specialist nutrition advisor. So yeah, a whole range of different support and advice, and that's all free, and it's for as long as the person needs it to be. So yeah, I absolutely love it. The team are fabulous, and what I love about when people, I read all the thank you cards when people say it feels like a sanctuary. It feels like people know our names. We feel like we've come to a place that understands us. That's exactly how we make it feel.
Gosh, that sounds really important, and yeah, lovely to hear that feedback that you say from patients. And so you kind of say the hub, so that's on the ground floor in Weston Park, is it?
It is, yeah. So it's always very difficult to describe, isn't it? So if the front entrance, if you're looking at Weston Park, the front entrance, we're to the left. So just look for the Weston Park Cancer Charity
and
logo. All of the purple, of course. And our charity hub is where our transport service is located. Again, there's a space in there. There are books to be able to take. You can go in and plug your mobile phone in if you're running out of battery. There's a waiting area. There's free hot and cold drinks and a huge amount of good, warm energy and banter. And that's where our volunteer drivers also take a pit stop between doing the shuttle runs as well.
Fantastic. Brilliant. So let's have another song. So you've picked this next song. Do you want to tell us
I have.
What
is
it
this
is
our lovely
why?
Rod Stewart?
It is,
Oh,
yes.
wonderful. Well, whenever you get into a sticky moment, you just think, well, what would Rod Stewart do? So I grew up, I'm born and raised in Sheffield, and my earliest memories are of Rod Stewart being played on an LP by my parents on the radio, on our record player. So here he is.
And which song particularly is this, and why this one?
Well, I could have gone for NA, but this one, I think it just takes me right back.
This Old Heart of Mine.
This
Brilliant.
Old Heart of Mine.
Thanks, Emma. You join me, it's Michael, it's my Saturday soundtrack, and I've got Emma, our Chief Executive at Weston Park Cancer Charity, who's been telling us about some of the fantastic work they do. We've heard a lot about the work that goes on within Weston Park Cancer Centre and around. Tell us a bit about the outreach work. You mentioned that early on, and what's done out in the community.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer that ordinary people, they live on ordinary streets, they live in communities. We don't live our lives, thankfully, in hospitals, do we? So, being able to get support as close to home as possible, I think is a really important thing that, well, certainly we at the charity were looking at how we could do that better, how we could do more of it. And also we were looking at, who was it that was walking through the door at our support centre here in S10, and who wasn't. And we invested £750,000 into a new community outreach service 3 years ago. And we bought 2 very big purple buses. And they drive round the streets of South Yorkshire. They park up in locations, and on the side of the bus it essentially says "Step on board now for cancer support." The buses are staffed by healthcare professionals, our volunteers, and we work hand in hand with community partners right across the city and the wider region. So we started off our first outreach area in the Manor in Sheffield, which is where I was born and raised. And I know for sure that my family, when I was growing back in the 80s, in the 90s, they would not have come here. They wouldn't have walked through the door at the Cancer Support Centre. But having something that is in your own local community, that has the reassurance of Weston Park, the brand of Weston Park, but being able to speak to a specialist nurse right there, don't get me wrong, going on a big purple bus might not be for everyone, but that's why the community partnerships are so very important. So we work with Manor and Castle Development Trust, who are an anchor organisation in that community, and we've done a huge range of things with them so that we are in the right places at the right times for the people who are in that community affected by cancer.
And do they go out across South Yorkshire, not just Sheffield and
They do,
Chesterfield?
yeah. So we started off with 11 community locations in Sheffield, and those are the areas that are most underserved. So where, cancer screening statistics are lowest, where people aren't showing up for their screening for a whole variety of systemic reasons, but also where, cancer outcomes are poorest. So from the Manor to Darnall to Burngreave to Southey, we are in those areas, and the service has been so welcomed. Those partners and those partnerships are incredibly powerful. So yeah, it was a very big shift for the charity, a very big change in how we did things. But in terms of those people we are now reaching, that community is more diverse than ever before.
And so is that reaching then, with what you're saying there, Emma, patients and people out in the community who've already been diagnosed with cancer, or are you trying to get out there, you say, about screening and things, just getting people talking
Both.
about
it? Absolutely. So, what we know is that if you detect cancer at the earliest opportunity, you are much more likely to have a better outcome. So encouraging people to go to screening, understanding signs and symptoms. So the team do a huge amount of education sessions in community groups, in church halls, at the mosque, a huge education piece, and also building trust with hospitals, building trust with different communities, with institutions that actually, there may be fear, there may be stigma, and then for people who have received a cancer diagnosis what is a good thing is people are living longer with a cancer diagnosis, and hopefully as well as they can be. But equally, some support closer to home on a more regular basis is what we're finding people benefit from.
That's brilliant. So a massive kind of shout out to our public to look out for those purple buses. So how will they know if there's one nearby or one coming into their area?
So we have a schedule right across the week. So we are in those different areas on a regular basis. So they will know, or our website tells, shows where we are. Also at places like we're outside the cathedral on a monthly basis in the city centre. We're at Meadow Hall on a regular basis. So again, it's in communities, but also in those high footfall areas where people be going for shopping or going to worship. And what that means is, they see the big purple bus, wonderful, they can step on board. If they want to know where it is that's closest to them, they can go on our website, which is www.westonpark.org.uk.
Brilliant. So back to Desert Island Discs. Tell us about this next song and why you've picked that.
So if it wasn't Rod Stewart playing on an LP, it was Bob Dylan. So I do very much like a little bit of Bob Dylan, and this is one of my favourites, which is Tangled Up in Blue.
Just before we kind of hear one last song before the news, we heard a lot. You've told us about some of the fantastic work that you and your volunteers do, but I understand some of the role of the charity is actually distributing some of those monies that you get from donations and gifts.
Yeah, absolutely. So we raised over £4 million last year through the generosity of supporters and donors, again, right across the region. That's individuals, that's businesses. I mean, I could give you a whole rundown of the different things people do to raise money money for Weston Park and so generously. But as you say, part of the work that we do is to give grants to others, to other organisations to have as maximum impact as possible. So some of the most impactful grants that we give are our small grants, and that's £1,500 to organisations that are community-based organisations, but also teams here in the hospitals. So if you have an idea that is going to make a difference to your patients, then apply to us for a small grant of up to £1,500 to help you do that. So some of the ones that we funded in 2025, we funded 28 grants. We did woodland wellbeing courses for families affected by cancer. We bought presents for paediatric patients going through radiotherapy, so we worked with the radiotherapy team to do that. We, at some of the grants, one of the grants was to buy vouchers for bras, which help patients to buy supported bras after radiotherapy treatment. We worked in partnership with the University of Sheffield, so we sponsor the Cancer Biology and Therapeutics Student Prize. So we make sure that, we are bringing through and recognising the very best in, the young researchers of the future. One of the ones that was the most moving and has had such positive feedback is bereavement bags. So these are purple bags. They have information in there, but these are bags that sadly, if a patient has passed away, that the family receive their belongings back in something that is special. And I remember getting the feedback from one of the nurses in Weston Park from the first one that was used, and said what a difference it was to her and to the family to be able to give the loved one's possessions back to the family in something that was dignified and brought dignity to that moment. There's a whole range of other ways that those small grants have been used. So we do feel-good floristry workshops. People have made flower crowns and all sorts, which have been absolutely lovely to see. We've brought new chairs for the radiotherapy department, books for the palliative care unit, and we also work in partnership with Rotherham Hospital and Community Charity and funded a Rotherham-based prostate support group. So there's just a huge variety of ways that the charity, through what could be seen as really quite a small amount of funding, £1,500, you think, well, it might not go very far. It never fails to surprise me, people's ingenuity of what they can do to make a difference with £1,500. The final example that I'll share with you is the gifts that the charity organise for patients who are in Weston Park on Christmas Day. So we have a whole host of our volunteers who come and wrap fluffy blankets, and those gifts go up to Weston Park on Christmas Eve, and they're distributed to patients who sadly have to be in the hospital on Christmas Day. And I would never want a single patient to feel like they've been forgotten on that day. So yeah, that one always is very special to us.
I'm sure. Absolutely sure. And so how would staff who have those ideas, how would they get in touch and share those ideas with you? So
we have two wonderful colleagues, our lovely Imogen and Grace, who run our grants programme, and all I would say is drop the charity an email, have a look on our website. Those examples that I've just shared are, details of those are up there just to get a bit of inspiration. But yeah, if you've got an amazing idea, drop Imogen or Grace a line and we can take them through the process.
Brilliant, thank you. So to take us up to the news, we've got pulp. Why pulp?
I'm a Sheffielder, aren't I? We can't not have pulp.
Absolutely. Common people, here it is. See you after the news. The best there, Tina Turner, and that was a request from Mahmood, the chair here at Sheffield Teaching Hospitals, and he asked if we could play that in honour of our wonderful 20,000 staff, and also says a massive thank you to you, Emma, and all the team at Weston Park Cancer Charity for the work that you do for our patients and communities. So thank you. But yes, if you've only just joined, where have you been? It's me, Michael. It's my Saturday soundtrack on Sheffield Hospital Radio, and I am really fortunate to be here with Emma, our Chief Exec at Weston Park Cancer Charity. So let's jump straight into another song, if that's okay, on your Desert Island disc. So tell us about this one, Emma.
So as we had Pulp just before the break, the next one is the Everly Pregnant Brothers and Hammers. So I'm a Sheffielder born and raised. My granddad was a welder, and guess I'm just really proud of the heritage that I have of this amazing city, and the kind of we're all standing on the shoulders of giants basically, aren't we? My granddad was a big influence in my life. I mean, I followed him to football matches, I followed him to Sunday League. He taught me to catch a ball, tie my shoelaces, and I remember him coming home on a Friday afternoon, collecting me from school, still having dirt down his nails, and we go and get an ice cream in the summer, and I'd still be wearing his flat cap, to be fair. So yeah, I'm just proud of the heritage. My dad grew up in Pittsmore, and I remember stories of him saying he heard the Hammers. It was a kind of soundtrack to this city. So yeah, it's a special one.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Here we go. That's I forget who that is. Emma, tell me
Everly Pregnant Brothers. Of course.
How could I forget?
How could you?
With
sacrilege.
Sorry. Yeah. Hope none of them are listening. Everly Pregnant Brothers there. So Emma, you've told us about some of the wonderful things that the charity does in terms of going out and volunteers and the grants. But when you look around the city on placards, when you look around Weston Park Cancer Centre on some of the signs, it's clear this year you're doing some pretty major fundraising around the MRI Simulator, which I understand is a piece of diagnostic kit and treatment kit that's pretty essential for cancer treatment. Tell us a bit about that. How are you doing the fundraising and how that'll benefit our patients?
So you're absolutely right. Well, we're doing our biggest ever appeal in our 30-year history, and the appeal is to raise £1.85 million for an MRI simulator, a dedicated piece of equipment that will be in Weston Park Hospital. And essentially what it does is it enables the clinical teams to be able to scan much more precisely and plan the treatment, radiotherapy treatment, much more precisely than they are able to on a CT scanner. So this essentially is the way things will be done in the future. It's the cutting technology, and that is why the charity is looking to bring that to Weston Park. It will be the 6th dedicated one in the country for a cancer centre, so there's not many of them that are around doing this at the moment. We are absolutely committed to getting that 6th one here for Weston Park for the benefit of patients across this region. When I remember speaking to Alice, the clinical director for radiotherapy, and having a cup of coffee with her, going, "Can you just tell me a bit more about this piece of kit? Sort of, what is it, Alice?" And she was really lovely. She met me on a day off for a cup of coffee, and she explained, she described it, but the thing that made the difference was she got her mobile phone out of her handbag and she showed me a scan, and she said, "Emma, just kind of have a look at that. Can you see anything on this patient's scan?" And I thought, oh dear me, I'm like, my GCSE biology isn't really cutting the mustard here. So I had a look and I thought, well, I don't think I can, so I'll be honest. I said, "No, I can't, Alice." And she flicked to the next photograph and showed me a scan that was much clearer, and I could see a dark mass. And she said, "If I can see it, I can treat it." And I knew going away from that coffee shop that was going to be the most expensive cup of coffee that I was ever going to have in my life, because it was going to cost me £1.85 million. And I didn't know how we were going to raise the money, but I know that Sheffield and this region, it's a big village, isn't it? So if we go and we say this is important for us, this is important for people here, people will help. And that's exactly what's happened. So we have a range of different donors who have given incredibly generously. One of those donors is Westfield Health. They have given up to £500,000 for match funding. So if Joe Bloggs on the street gives £10, Westfield will match it by another £10, which is incredibly powerful, makes an incredible difference. And on Wednesday this week, on World Cancer Day, the master cutler who chose Weston Park and this campaign, this appeal as his charity of the year. And I think if you go back to, our heritage as a city, the community of cutlers are coming together and businesses across the region coming together to join forces to raise money towards this appeal as well. We're at £1.4 million right now, which, I grew up on the manor. That sort of money was, is quite a lot from where I come from. That is just remarkable. And the groundswell of support has been incredibly moving. So we are encouraging people to help us reach that finish line and get to that 1.85 million so we can get that piece of kit.
And how soon do you think you'll be able to get to that value, and how soon do you think it could be here in Sheffield?
So we are really hoping that the machine will be with us in 2026. You will know better than me in terms of building work and reconfiguring spaces in some of our hospitals. That is a challenging thing to do. I've had an extension on my house and that was challenging enough.
But 1.85 million?
Not quite. But, all of the team at Sheffield Teaching Hospitals and our donors coming together around this really ambitious thing. It's going to improve people's lives and it's going to save people's lives.
And so if our listeners, like the match funding that you described there from Westfield, if our listeners wanted to do some fundraising themselves, it's fantastic, when as you say, kind of Sheffield and I presume South Yorkshire, North Derbyshire folk get behind something that benefits us all. How might they go about?
We have people that are knitting things. We have people jumping out of aeroplanes. We have people doing coffee mornings. They're doing time for tea and baking cakes. So there's a whole range of different ways that people can fundraise. But equally, if people are simply wanting to make a donation, they can go to our website. And it's a really simple process to make a donation. I would always encourage people to leave gift aid or agree to give gift aid if they're a taxpayer. So that means that we can claim a percentage on top of their gift from the government as well.
Fantastic. Great. Right, let's go for another song. So this next one is All I Need from Air, which I didn't recognise it when you said it, but when I played it, I did. So tell us about this one, Emma.
So this is for my first trip to Amsterdam, which I think I was 16, 17. It was very much back in the day, and it's just a memory of a lovely summer in a European city and feeling free.
Fantastic. Here we go. Memories of being 16 again there then, Emma.
Not that long ago.
Exactly. So tell us a bit, before that we were talking about fundraising for the MRI Sim and some of the match funding from Westfield, and we touched on a bit there about how listeners might get involved with some of their fundraising, but clearly as well as some of those big grants and big donations that you get, lots of things that I'm sure patients, relatives, listeners can get involved with. So tell us about some of the other ways in which you do your fundraising.
So it's definitely the wild and the wonderful. Between Christmas and New Year just gone, I was walking alongside one of our patrons, Mick, who on his 70th birthday, which was on New Year's Eve, or the 30th, just before New Year's Eve, he walked 70k on his 70th birthday round the streets of Sheffield with two other remarkable gentlemen. So, we have such dedicated supporters. It is, honestly, it's really quite humbling, Who else would walk 70k on their 70th birthday? But he did it for Weston Park, and it was, as I say, incredibly moving. I witnessed people coming up to him to, tell stories of how their loved ones have been cared for at Weston Park, make donations into the bucket that he was carrying around. So, it is a moving experience. It was a moving experience. 53% of our income to the charity comes through people remembering us in their will. Appeal. And I remember the first letter I received at the charity. I'd only been there, kind of a month or so, and I felt very, very posh having my first handwritten letter. Within it, there was a cheque for £27,000, and the letter that came with the cheque was handwritten in what I can only describe as handwriting that looked very much like my grandma's. It's very much a grandma or grandparents type handwriting, and it was the executor of a lady's will. And the executor was describing how this person had been cared for at Weston Park over a number of years, that she was in her mid-90s when she passed away, that she had started out her life on a farm in Totley, and it was a cattle farm, and her and her dad used to go on a horse and cart delivering milk in the local area. And, I just think to myself what an absolute privilege it is to hear and be part of those stories. So 53% of our income comes from people who are kind enough to remember Weston Park in their will. This month we are running our free will writing service during February, so we work with four or five regional solicitors for people to get the right advice, and people may wish to include Weston Park in their will. They don't have to. We have a number of people who have signed up for those appointments, so if anybody listening is interested in that, I'd encourage them to go to our website. We've got people jumping out of aeroplanes for us. We've got people doing the 10K, the Sheffield Half. One of the most remarkable memories I have of the Sheffield Half is amazing Team Molly, in memory of Molly, a young woman who passed away sadly aged 27. A whole team of people are still raising money in her memory. One of those people did the Sheffield Half in full firefighter kit, including breathing apparatus. People are doing the 3 Peaks for us, and we also have a wonderful community event in September called Walk as One, where people can either do a couple of miles or 5K or 10K, I believe it is, round out of Endcliffe Park in Sheffield. Over 500 people joined last year, and I mean, it turns Sheffield very purple on that day. But it's a really lovely community event where families, colleagues from the hospital and others come together. And I feel very proud on that day.
And I presume all of that's on your website again, is
all
it?
on
That's
the
where
website.
people can go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I know my sister did the Walk as One last year, and for me and my dad, that was really proud, watching her walk into Endcliffe Park, and as you say, very purple, and some fantastic things that people do. So that's lovely to hear. So let's have another song. So it's Blue Tones this time. Where are we now?
I am firmly in my Britpop era. So whether you were Oasis, you were Blur, well, I was Blue Tones. So this one definitely brings back some memories.
Brilliant. Thank you. So the next song we've got is a pretty special song that we're going to play, Emma. So, because it's by the Sheffield Cancer Choir. Tell us how that came about.
It absolutely is. So this is a group of remarkable people who sing absolutely beautifully. They came together in 2019. They approached the charity. Daryl, one of the founders, approached the charity and said, "Do you have a choir?" And at that point, I was like, "No, I don't think we do. I was very new in post. I don't think so." She says, "Do you want one?" I said, "Well, why not? Let's give it a go." So they applied for one of our small grants of £1,500. It has gone from absolute strength to strength. So these are people who either are living with cancer themselves at the moment, who have been through a cancer journey, or who have cared for a loved one. They are fun, they are friendly, they are welcoming, and as I say, they sing beautifully.
And so this song, or do they continue to release songs for you or raise money for you? What's that relationship with the choir? How's that work?
So they sing in all sorts of different venues, raising money for Weston Park. So, we gave them the £1,500 grant to start with. I mean, they didn't even spend all of it. Before long, they were raising money to give it back, which is just remarkable. They have raised thousands of pounds over the years. They have done a shall we call it a semi-naked calendar to raise money. They have they've sung at the City Hall, they've sung at supermarkets. There is nothing that these passionate people won't do to give back to Weston Park. And the CD is just one of the things that they have managed to pull off.
Fantastic. And it is a classic song.
Oh,
one
absolutely.
of my favourites. I think
I might even get you dancing for this one.
I know all the moves. This is their rendition of Reach from S Club. So just tell us a bit more then. Obviously, we're kind of coming to a close now, but which are the other areas? I mean, clearly some fantastic work that the charity's doing. So tell us a bit more about your work and your support to our patients.
On Wednesday was World Cancer Day, and our community right across South Yorkshire joined our campaign Turn It Purple. So the iconic Meadowhall dome turned purple as it turned to dusk. We had our amazing volunteers right across Meadowhall talking to people about the charity and its work, and landmarks right across South Yorkshire, from Sheffield train station to Westfield Health to the City Hall to Barnsley Town Hall. We had Casa Hotel in Chesterfield in North Derbyshire. We had the South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority building lit up purple. And it was just such a moving, if I'm honest, a moving experience to see all of those organisations turn purple. I also saw purple dinosaurs, people dressed as purple dinosaurs. I saw purple hippos. I saw Barnsley Metrodome turn their pool purple for Weston Park. So it was just a really amazing community showing people affected by cancer that they matter. And yeah, it was an incredibly special thing to see.
Brilliant. So let's have another song that you brought along, which is Van Morrison this time. So why Van Morrison, Emma?
So this one, I think it just reminds me to pause and be grateful. And, you know, life is busy, you know, life is complex for lots of people. You know, we see people in very, you know, difficult circumstances. And this one is the one I turn on and just pause and be grateful.
Right, we're going to try and squeeze in 2 more songs, all being well, Emma. So that was Van Morrison. So next up, The Strokes. Tell us why The Strokes.
Well, you would have found me in the lead mill watching these live, and they were just absolutely fabulous. So yeah, I probably was sticking to the dance floor at this point.
This is a fantastic song. We'll have The Strokes and then a bit of Dolly to take us up to the news. The Strokes. Well, Emma, these 2 hours have flown by. Thank you ever so much for coming in today. I really appreciate it. And thank you for helping me out with some of those gremlins in the system. But just for our listeners then, so tell us, so if they are living with cancer, receiving treatment at Weston Park Centre, or their relatives are, how can they look for support and input from your charity?
So I think my main message is don't face cancer alone. So you don't have to do that. We are here to support. Please come and contact us via our website, so westonpark.org.uk. You can phone us up, so that's 0114 553 3330. You can drop into our support centre or our charity hub, both right beside Weston Park Hospital, or you can look out for our big purple buses in a community location near you. But again, the schedule of those and the locations are on our website. Right. Equally, if you are wanting to join our appeal or donate and support the charity, there is a donate button or a join the appeal button on our website, and that's a really easy kind of way to give back.
Brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much. Thank you all for all that you do, and please take that thanks back to your team for the fantastic fundraising support, help that you do to all our patients, and I'd say that personally as well. So thank you ever so much for that, and thanks for picking your songs. And your last one, bit of Dolly.
I mean, you can't have a Desert Island Disc without Dolly Parton, can you?
Absolutely. Thanks ever so much, Emma. See you soon.